Perfect. All right, so today we are going over internet safety. So I'm going to talk a little bit about password safety, how to tell if you're on a secure website, shopping safely, and then avoiding common email scams. I do have everybody muted, so if you have questions while I'm going through everything, go ahead and just type it into the chat box. I'll be monitoring chat, and I'll answer any questions as they come up, as well as pause for questions at the end of each section. So if you are a slow typer, you'll have time to get those asked. All right, let me share my screen again. All right, so like I said, we're going to spend all day today talking about internet safety. And then the first thing we're going to talk about is creating strong passwords and then safety around passwords. So one of the things that you want to do when you're creating a password for any website is to make sure it's strong and unique when you create them. Don't repeat your passwords for multiple websites. I am guilty of that. I'm sure we all are, but you really should have a separate password for each website that you're doing. And at the very least, your email, online banking, and social media sites, at the very least, need to all have separate and unique passwords. And this is because if a social media site gets hacked, then hackers may try to access your email that's associated with that social media account using that same password. And then anything else that you have in your email that then they would be able to get access to. So at the very least, keep those three things with separate, unique passwords. And I say unique, don't just change the number at the end of your password from a 1 to a 2 for your email and your banking. It needs to really be separate and unique. Another tip is to use a passphrase instead of just a word. So instead of just one word, Bemis 1, you could do a multiple unrelated word phrase. Something like orange donkey runs. I will type my example of that in the chat. So I combine multiple capital letters, lowercase letters, numbers, and symbols to create this this phrase instead. Phyllis, I'm going to come back to your question at the end of this group here. So then that kind of comes back to make sure you're including numbers, capital letters, and symbols in your passwords. When you're creating a password, most of the time that website has a specific requirement for you, and it'll tell you that you need 8 characters with a letter and a number and a symbol. But even if it's not required, try to use them. All right, so let's talk a little bit about this LastPass app. Basically, it's a way to store your passwords, so that way you don't have to remember each password. Instead of having to remember your password for your email and your Facebook and your Twitter and then your Old Navy account, whatever it may be, you just have to remember the one password for your LastPass account. So it's basically just a password management program. LastPass integrates with your web browser so it can autofill passwords for you, things like that. But yeah, it's just a way for you to store and remember your passwords. Are there any other questions about passwords at this point? All right. So I'm going to go on to website safety. With so many websites out there, it can be hard to tell if the website that you're looking at is safe and secure. So one of the best indicators of a website's security is the presence of what's called an SSL certificate. You can tell whether a website has this by checking for the S in HTTPS, or depending on what kind of internet browser you're using, there will be a literal lock symbol in your address bar. And basically that S or that lock just indicates that your website that particular website is secured with an SSL certificate. The Google Chrome especially it's just a little lock button. And when you click on it, it'll tell you your connection is secure, their certificate, what cookies they're using, and things like that. So by clicking on that lock symbol in the address bar, you can kind of tell what's going on with your information. The other thing you want to do is double check the actual URL itself before you enter any personal information into the website. So you want to make sure that URL is one that you are expecting. So for example, you want to look for numbers in the place of letters, misspellings, weird things that you weren't expecting. So if you were expecting to be buying from Amazon.com, but your URL actually says Amazon with a 0, I would close out of that and go back to Amazon.com and type it in the right way. So it's just a quick visual way to check. I always double check before I log on to my banking website, and then before I check out from anywhere. Just want to make sure that it's looking like it's supposed to. Let's see. And then the other thing, which is kind of related to passwords, is that you can use multi-factor authentication when it's available. So if you are logging into a website, such as Google, Amazon, things like that, you can have it double check that it really is you. So it's basically a second way to verify your identity. And typically, you get a text message with a 6-digit code that comes to you, and then it asks it just verifies you put that code in, and then it logs you in. You will never be called for this code, especially not for a normal website. It's really going to be a code that's just sent to your phone, and then you enter that code on the website. All right, so I got a message. Sometimes when on certain websites, I see a message with an arrow pointing to the web address that it is not secure. What difference does this make as long as you will not be entering personal information? Yeah, if you're just browsing, it's not that big of a deal. You might want to make sure you don't have other things open on your computer. You don't have your banking information in a new tab, just in case the website does have anything on it. But if you're just browsing for information, I'll click into a million different blogs for hiking and stuff like that. And on those, I'm not really concerned about the security of that website because, like you said, you're just looking at the website and you're not entering personal information. That was a good question. The other one, is that a one-time code? Yes. Most of the time that code expires in a matter of minutes. So there's no reason to save it, keep it, do anything with it other than enter it in that one time. So yeah. Are there any other questions about checking websites for security? All right. So we're going to move on to the kind of related shopping safety. Because if you're like me, especially during quarantine, online shopping has become a pastime. All right. So when you're buying online, you want to perform those same security checks that we mentioned for websites. So you want to double check that URL, make sure it does have that secure, that lock, or the HTTPS before you proceed and enter any of your information. But one other thing is to be wary of deals that are too good to be true. A lot of times, especially on social media, you'll get targeted ads based on other things you've searched. And those things will sometimes be like a crazy cheap deal on something that was hundreds of dollars on all the other websites you checked. Okay, that is too good to be true. You don't want to go through with a purchase with that. So just kind of keep that in mind. If you're like, holy cow, I'll never get this deal again, second guess what they're giving you. The next one is to pay with a credit card rather than a debit card if you're able to. And this is because it's a lot easier to get your money back, to stop that transaction, things like that. If someone steals your credit card information rather than your debit card. Phyllis, I don't know Woot, so I'm not sure if I will be able to talk about it. But yeah, so use a credit card instead of a debit card. If you don't have a credit card, look at some of the sites like PayPal and things like that, which is a way to send your money through PayPal to that provider, instead of sending your information directly to that online store. And if PayPal isn't available, just kind of do some research. If I'm not sure about a website, I'll always do a Google search and just be like, is XYZ website legit? Is it safe? And then kind of read people's reviews and then make my decision from there whether or not I want to continue with that transaction. But one thing is never send cashier's checks or money orders. Don't wire people money. Don't do things like that, especially for services that have yet to be rendered. So just kind of keep that in mind. And then the other thing is to read the fine print on what you're buying, especially if it is a really good deal, because there's some things that you might not be able to undo. You might not be able to return, get a refund, or cancel a purchase. So you want to make sure you know what those policies are before you make a purchase. The big one with that is usually airlines, but if I'm buying from Etsy or something like that, I always check and make sure, can I return this if I need to? And if I can't, then I take a second and think about, do I really need to purchase this item? So we did get a little definition of Woot. It's a daily deal site owned by Amazon. Good deals, multiple daily deals. So it's like a website where you could get good deals. All right. Are there any questions about buying safely online or anything else that I've gone through so far? All right. So now we're going to take a second and look at email scams. So the first thing I want to talk about is some common email scams, what they are, so that way you can be aware of them. These are targeted specifically for email right now, but just kind of be aware that these are also common phone scams too. All right, so our first one is that personal emergency scam. You've probably heard about this, but you'll get a message that appears to be from someone you know, saying that they're in distress and they need money. They're often going to ask you to not call them, to not confirm the details of that story, but that's exactly what you need to do. So if you get a call It says, your grandson is in danger. He's in Mexico for spring break, and he and his friends got arrested. He just needs $200 bail money. That's it. Wire it to him. Don't tell mom and dad. You might want to double check and make sure grandson was actually in Mexico. And then if he was, really give them a call and see what's going on. So just kind of think about that. Another one is owing money. And this one was really big, especially recently with the stimulus checks everybody got. So you'll get a message with a scammer posing as a bill collector or a government agency claiming you owe money or you have to pay in order to receive your money. Government agencies, especially, are never going to email you about money owed. The IRS only communicates via mail. So unless you received a physical letter in the mail, you don't owe the IRS money. So just kind of like if you get a message that says your utility bill is 6 months overdue and you're like, but I swear I was paying it, go to your utility company's website and check your account. Don't just click on things or send people money from the email. Another one is an online dating scam. Online dating is very popular now. And so you build a relationship with a person online, and then all of a sudden they tell you that they need this money for X, Y, and Z reason, and you love them. So of course you're going to send it to them. But there again, don't send money to people you haven't met, even if you love them. And then the last one is the infected computer scam. So you'll get a message from your computer company, your manufacturer, saying that your computer has been affected, and then they'll give you an offer to fix it for a small fee. Don't pay that fee. Go to your antivirus software. If you don't have one, check if you have a Windows computer, you have one built in. Go check that and run it and just see if your computer is actually having issues. And if it is, get it fixed with your antivirus, not through that email. So these all sound kind of like funny and not really serious in the context that we're talking about them right now, but people get scammed all day, every day. So just kind of be aware that these are the popular ones. And when you're checking your email and you see that message from your grandson saying he needs that money real fast, he'll pay you back, take a second and think if your grandson would really email you for that money. Any questions about these common scams before I go into avoiding them? All right. So we're going to look at just a couple of ways to avoid email scams and to avoid clicking on phishing emails. So the biggest thing you can do is don't click on a link in an email, especially if it was an unsolicited email, meaning it's from a mailing list you never signed up for or a company you've never used before. If I get regular marketing emails from Old Navy, it's probably safe that I can click on a link from an email that's actually from Old Navy, but you want to check. So it will send you a link. A phishing email is where they send you a link. You click on that link, it takes you to some website, you enter your password, and then now it knows your password. When you get an email with a link in it, I always open a new tab in my browser and then go to that website itself. Even with Old Navy, if they send me a marketing email that says everything's 70% off right now, if I go to the Old Navy website, everything will still be 70% off, even if I don't click on that link in that email. I never click on links from my bank. So I bank with Wells Fargo. I never click on anything from Wells Fargo. I always, if I see something from Wells Fargo, I open a new tab, I go to wellsfargo.com, and I go to my account from there. Don't click on the link in the email. And when I say visit the website yourself, I don't mean copy that URL and then go to that website. I really do mean instead of clicking on the link from Old Navy, go to oldnavy.com and find from that website what the email was talking about. And then the other thing is to check the sender's email address. You want to look for misspellings or incorrect domain names. Domain names are what comes after the @ symbol. So a couple days ago, my fiance's dad got an email from Apple that was saying, here's your Apple receipt. And he was like, I don't think I bought anything from Apple recently. And we looked at it and it had, everything was spelled correctly, but the domain name was just slightly off. And then we looked at it again and it was like exactly formatted as an Apple email. But Apple never sends attachments. Everything is like in the email itself. And that email had an attachment. So we're like, delete it, ignore it. We can check our Apple account and our credit card later to see if we really were charged for something we didn't buy. So you just kind of want to check and see if something feels weird, don't mess with it. Even if you're not quite sure if there is a misspelling or there is an incorrect domain name. Are there any questions at this point? We covered this a lot faster than I was expecting to. I'll give people a second to type if we've got. All right, so I want to show you a couple other, let me see, I just got the chat. So just opening a suspicious email cause problems? Not typically. So let me repeat that again. I don't know if I said it clear enough. The question was, could just opening a suspicious email cause problems? Not typically. In theory, yes, there are some emails that could cause harm that way. But your email does a pretty good job of filtering those things out. Most of the time, when you're getting an email that is going to cause harm, you have to download an attachment or click on a link in the email itself. But it is best if you're not sure. Your email does have the ability to mark things as spam or mark things as phishing or report as junk, whatever it may be. You can just do that. And then if it's something that was actually important, that person will either get in touch with you again through email, or if you know them, they'll call you, whatever it might be. But for the most part, you do have to click on or download something. That was another good question. All right. So these are two websites that I found that I thought did a really good job talking about internet safety. So they're both geared towards seniors, but that doesn't mean they're not relevant. I mean, I'm 27 and I found things that were really useful in there. But so the AARP tips for staying safe online. So it just kind of walks you through different things. And then just they have more on there. But then this one, Connect Safely, I found incredibly useful. So they have all kinds of things. You can scroll through this page for forever, or back up at the top, they have two links that you can get a PDF of. And it is, let's see if I can zoom that here. It is a very thoroughly researched guide, as well as easy to read. It's concise, and it does things like this. So just talking about different tips for staying safe. And then they have specific sections. So online dating, how to stay safe. Okay, shopping, how to stay safe. So I really recommend this guide. I pulled a lot of information from here for today's class. But yeah, so after we finish up today, I will send everybody the PowerPoint that I had through today, so that way you can see all of the tips that I had. And then it also includes these links. All right, so we just got another question. I continually get pop-ups from Adobe saying there's a new download that I should have installed. Are these pop-ups legitimate? So that is the question of the century. Probably if you have Adobe installed on your computer, but that's another big tip is don't click on pop-ups. So if you see that and you're like, I don't know, go to where you have Adobe installed on your computer and see if there is an update. On my computer, I have Adobe in the toolbar, and if I click on it, it tells me I do need to update there. So same thing, like if you get a message saying that your antivirus software needs updates, like this, I don't know if you all can see, but I just got an update. There's 8 updates ready to install. I always ignore them. And then I go to that part of my computer and see if there really is an update. It's another good question. So like I said, we went through this pretty fast. If you all have other questions you want me to answer related to staying safe online on your computer, type them in the chat. We've got 20 minutes if you need it. Jane, I'm going to link in the chat how to install updates from Adobe. Just so that way you can, so that way you know how to download updates, and then maybe you won't get those pop-ups anymore. All right, so I did get another question. How can you tell if what seems to be a legitimate source is actually a phony? What do you mean by as a legitimate source? Are we talking websites here? Looks similar to a known popular source or company. Yeah, so that's where I always check that URL. So people can fake a lot of things. People can fake the way their website looks. They can fake logos. They can fake products. They can fake purchases. But what you can't fake is that URL. So up in the top here, if I was expecting this to be connectsafely.org, that's what I would want it to say. If I saw that this was a 0, I'd be like, okay, that's wrong. Or if it wasn't .org, it was .com. So things like that, where it helps to know what that legitimate source is. The other thing is, on Google, your legitimate source should come up first. So if I type in Amazon, whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. So I typed in Amazon. This is the legitimate source because Google does a pretty good job of weeding out the fake stuff. So I can see here, okay, this is what that URL should look like. And then I can go back to the one that might look weird and see what looks different about it. that's the biggest way to do. You can also check down at the bottom of websites. They usually have information, so you could check what time, like what year the last thing was copyrighted, things like that. And then one of our librarians, Carol, put up, we have a guide somewhere of checking for legitimate sources. Let me see if I can find it. So this just has the link I just sent has how to fact check, and this is for news specifically, so checking your information, but it's a pretty nice visual guide and things like that. So hopefully that answers. All right, let me come back up. Let's see. Could you recommend security apps for computers and cells? By security apps, do you mean like antivirus, or do you mean like password storage like we were talking about earlier? And while you're answering that question, I'm going to move on to the next one. If I have internal security, do I need to download another one? I keep getting requests to download security from Norton. So it looks like you have a MacBook. You should be fine. The included antivirus stuff on computers is getting better and better. Had it been 5 years ago, I would have told you, yes, please buy another one. But honestly, you're fine. And Norton is kind of pushy about paying and downloading their service. But like I said, if you're on a Windows computer, you also have built-in security. It's like Windows Defender, I think is what it's called. Since I'm on my work computer, I can't show you what that looks like, but it's built into your computer. And then it's just kind of depends on what you're doing on your computer and things like that. If you want to buy more, because usually that built-in stuff is just scanning for the very basic threats. Yeah, so Carol works at the library and she just sent in the free component from Malwarebytes. So I got another question. Can you compare security programs you subscribe to, like Avast, ESET, and Malwarebytes? I am not the best person to answer that question because I also have an Apple computer. And so most of like everything I use is built into my computer. So I am not able to confidently compare those different programs. Y'all are asking good questions. Okay, so since I haven't gotten a response about the security apps for computers and cells, I do just want to say LastPass is a good computer or password storage, as is Dashlane. I'll type those in. But there's so many. Whoops. I'm sorry, I sent that privately, not everybody. So those are two different password storage companies. I believe LastPass offers a free version. Dashlane also offers a free version, but then if you want more security, you have to pay for more. They should both have phone apps, so you can have it on your phone as well. Are there other questions? You guys have had good questions today. All right. So one last thing to talk about, and it's kind of talked about in this Connect Safely guide, but is a VPN. Why should I feel safe when using a password program that stores my password info in the cloud? That is the question, right, that everybody should be asking themselves. If you don't feel safe doing it, then absolutely do not do it. I think each one talks about their safety and security, but that's something you would have to research for yourself and see if you do feel secure doing it. Because, right, if it gets hacked, then essentially every password you have has also been hacked. But so the last thing I wanted to talk about was VPNs, which is a virtual private network, which is something you can add to your computer and to your phone. And it makes your internet browsing and what you're doing on your device secure. So it can't be tracked. You can change the location of your device. So if you don't want that location data associated with Denver or wherever it is you are, you can change that to be Dallas or New York City or wherever it is. So the VPNs are another thing to look into. And they're mentioned somewhere on this Connect Safely. I can't remember where it is off the top of my head. But yeah, so they talk about them, how to use them, and then give some suggestions. So, but that's another one that you would need to determine for yourself. So kind of do that research. There is a website, put that in the chat here. Oh, I did not. Let's see if we can open it. So they have a list of security vendors. It might take you a couple clicks to get to it, but then that would answer some of the questions about security programs that I am not comfortable answering, but they have a list there. All right, are there any other questions?